Alright, I now want to add a couple buttons where I can change the shape from circle to square back to circle, and then you can add additional shapes if you want to. But to do that, I am going to use paint.net. You can use any other art drawing program, but paint.net's by far one of my favorite free ones to make these buttons. And I am going to resize this so that it is a 40 by 40 because my squares for the colors were 50 by 50. Doing a 40 by 40 image along with the padding inside the actual button will make it pretty close to being the same size. I'm going to change this to 40 by 40. Then I'll zoom in so I can actually see what I'm doing. And I'm going to create a new layer. So down here on my layers, I'm going to click the little plus sign to add a new layer. So I'm drawing on layer 2. Then over here on the left hand side in my tools, right here are the shapes. I'm going to click on shapes. The default one is a rectangle, so we'll go ahead and start with that rectangle. This next icon over lets me decide whether I want to draw just a shape outline, draw the fill shape, or both the fill and the outline. I'm just going to do an outline for my square, and I'll leave it black, so that looks pretty good. Now, with this being a rectangle, that means I can draw rectangles or squares. What I can do to make sure that it's actually maintaining a square shape is to hold shift as I click and drag. So I'm going to click up here holding shift and click down, and now it won't allow me to do anything other than squares. And I'm going to drag down until I have that. Oops, I accidentally don't know what I just did there. Let's try that again. Alright, so I think I let go of shift before I let go of the mouse last time. That's why it ended up being weird, and that's still not, I don't like that. Let's see if I can, there we go. Now it looks like it's centered good. Alright, so I now have my square. What I'm going to do now is come over here to my background. I'm going to delete the background. And what this is going to do when I save this as a PNG, now create a transparent image. Now mine, my background is white, so I really didn't have to do that, but I know some of you in your projects probably use something other than just white backgrounds for your paint projects, so this will make that transparent. Now just where I did black on my square, if you like the dark themes and you did like a black background back here, you'd probably want to change the colors here to like white or a different color. Alright, so I'm going to save this file, save as. Make sure I'm in my folder for my project. I'm going to call this one square, and I'm going to make sure it is PNG, which that's the last option I'd selected, so it was already on PNG. Hit save. It's going to ask me, that's how I don't really need to change any of that, and there we go, I've got my square. And I'm just going to very quickly repeat that process for the circle. So I'm going to create a new image, also make it 40 by 40. Same thing, zoom in, create a new layer, come over here, select my tools, click this, now I'll change that to a circle, and I already chose the shape outline only. Come up here, same thing, I'm going to hold the shift so it doesn't do an oval, and try to center that as best as I can. That looks good enough. Delete my background. There we go, file, save as. Circle, get my fingers on the right keys, there we go, circle, and make sure it's PNG, it is. Okay, got my two images. Now let's switch back over to Visual Studio Code and show you how to add those into buttons. So we've not done this in class before. We've put text in buttons, we've never done images. It's pretty straightforward. It's no different than adding the text. So I'm going to find my div for my brush shape, so there it is. And I'm going to add a button. And inside the button, I'm going to add an image tag. And since circle is my default, I'll go ahead and hope if I can spell. There we go, circle.png. And I have an image for that, so let me just quickly refresh this and show you that I now have a button with the circle image. And you can see that with that padding inside the button, it's a little bit bigger than those, but it's pretty close. So that's why I did the 40 by 40 for that image. And now I'm going to do the same thing for the square. Okay, refresh. Okay, I've got my two buttons. Now I can switch between square and circle, except now I need to do the script. I probably should make my square a little bit smaller, but oh well, good enough for now. All right, so let's add the script now so that when I click on this, it changes the shape to circle. When I click on this one, it changes it to square. So I need to create another variable, and this will be shape. And like I said, the default is circle, so I'm going to go ahead and say it'll start off as circle if we don't click on anything. Now I need a function that's going to switch between circle and square. So I'm going to create a function called, I'll call it change shape. Since I have one called change color, I'll do the same format, change shape. Change shape is going to take an argument just like color took a color to change it to blue, red, whatever. So I'm going to put an S in here and do the exact same thing that I did for the colors where I just say shape equals whatever S is. So when it gets called, it's going to send circle or square and then save. So it's temporarily going to store that as S and then save that as shape. So now I'll come up to my buttons. On click equals, what function did we just create? We created change shape. I am in the circle button, so I want to do change shape, and just like I did with the circle, I don't want to do double quotes in here. I want to do single quotes, and I'll send it the word circle. And I don't know why I keep misspelling circle. There we go. Okay, so on click, change shape, circle. So it's going to send circle down here, temporarily store it as S, and then save shape as circle. Same thing then for the square. On click equals single quotes square. And there we go. So now every time I click it, it's going to change back and forth between shape, that's shape, circle, and square. All right, so that takes care of changing shape, but now how are we using that? We're not using that down here. Well, what we need to do now, this right here, well, this specifically, these three lines are drawing a circle. Well, I only want to do those if shape equals circle. So if shape equals circle, then do these three lines. I'll tab those in. Okay, so if it's square, it's not going to do that. So let's just refresh this. And so I click on circle, choose a color. Okay, it's drawing. Switch to square. Nothing happens. That's good because that means that our if statement is being read. Now we need an else if shape equals square. Now we want it to draw squares. So how do I draw squares? Well, we already have the X, the Y, and the fill color. So what I need to do is pretty much the exact same thing that I did here. Begin path, draw the square, then fill it. So CTX dot begin path, CTX dot rect, R-E-C-T. Then where do I want it to be? I want it to draw at X and I want it to draw at Y. And then how big do I want it? Well, size by size. The length and the width of the square will be size and size. Then lastly, CTX dot fill. All right, let's try that. Refresh. Actually, backing up here just a second before I even go, I already see that I made a mistake. This if statement, somehow I accidentally jumped down, so I am outside of the paint. That else should have been on this if statement, so I missed that somehow. So let's take all this, drag it up. There we go. So that, let's get my tabs. So there we go. That one goes with this else. This one goes with that if. And then that goes to the function. Okay, there we go. I think that should be good. So let's refresh this and take a look at that. So I hit my square. Let's increase the square, make it nice and big. Blue. Once again, if I just click, it's not going to do anything, but if I click and drag just a little bit, there we go, we're getting squares. Now notice that's putting the square in the upper left-hand corner where the mouse is. So the square, when we draw squares, it doesn't draw from the middle like a circle. It draws from the top left corner. If we want that square to be kind of centered, then what we're going to have to do is actually move it up and back half of the size, because like this is what, 28, let's make this 30, make it really easy. So if I do 30, that means if I want it down here, then I need to go over 15, down 15, which is really moving the square up and back 15 each time. So what I need to do, if I want it centered, is to, for the x and the y, do x minus size divided by 2 and y minus size divided by 2. So once again, if it was 30 like it was there, if I subtract 15 from both of those, then that is going to center it. So if I refresh this, make this big enough so we can see it again, and click, oops, forgot to make it a square. There we go. We can see that it actually placed it right in the middle of the cursor. All right, so that is how we can now switch back and forth between squares and circles. So some final things that we're going to want to try to do here, probably be a good idea to add an eraser. So we'll add an eraser to the program. It would be nice if I could just draw, if I wanted a big square somewhere in here, it'd be nice if I could just click and add a square. So that's what we're going to look at in upcoming videos.